You're listening to our podcast on YouTube, which is awesome. But it's even better if you listen to it on one of the many podcast platforms out there, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, any one of them. You can find it all there, listen to it on the go, wherever you are. That way, we don't rely on the algorithm to make sure that you know that there's a new episode. So check out our podcast or listen to it on our website, podcastofbiblicalproportions.com. Thanks for listening. We apologize for the minor echoes in the recording. Hello everybody, and welcome to a podcast of Biblical Proportions. Episode 9, Noah and the Flood Part 2, The Non-Hero. After discussing in our first episodes the legends of the creation of the world and the first humans, today we get to the Bible's first real hero, Noah, or Noah. While the previous stories were short and straightforward, and the human characters were flat and uninteresting, the heroic Noah has his tale spread over Genesis chapters 6 through 9. He builds an ark, takes in animals, and survives the flood through his ingenuity, resourcefulness, and quick thinking. No. Noah's character is actually very dull and interchangeable. He does nothing but obey every order he gets without even a yes, God. And then he gets drunk and exposes his genitals in front of his children. Classic Noah. But there's a whole lot to unpack in this story. The slow building suspense, Noah's loneliness in the ark, and the two deities who both decided to exterminate humanity. The same two gods we've grown to know and love, Elohim and Yahweh, stitched together into one narrative. They drive the story forward and repeatedly go over their annihilation plans as if they are reveling in the carnage they left underwater. In our first episode about Noah, we discussed the historical, geographical, and cultural context of the Bible's flood story and its hero. In this episode, we'll discuss the themes and hidden gems in the story. Hi, Omri.
Hi, Gil.
Before we start, we want to give a massive shout out to Michelle Collins, the first member of the show that we never even mentioned that we have a membership plan. And she just got onto our site, podcastofbiblicalproportions.com, and just did everything by herself. And we didn't even ask. That's awesome. Thank you, Michelle. So Noah.
The flood itself, as we talked in the last episode, it's a well-known story. It's a well-known myth that some say has some real memory to it, like a real event from history memory to it. You need that some kind of a preface or a prelude or prologue or whatever. And the prologue is unrelated completely to the grand narrative of the Bible. You have giants there, Nephilim. You have son of gods, like some kind of celestial beings. Other interpretation much later attribute to them like angelic forces or angels or some kind of a superhuman beings. But it's like son of God in the context, son of gods, because the name here is Elohim and not Yahweh. They're sons of Elohim. So you have like a prehistory conception that the rules that apply now to your day-to-day life, your average mortality rate is like 60 years old, 70 years old if you're lucky. So back then people lived until 1,000 years. Now you have regular people doing day-to-day stuff. But back then you had sons of gods and Nephilim and giants who roamed the earth. So you need some kind of an explanation why they are not there anymore.
Yes, and the reason that they are not there is because everything was horrible.
Yeah, because people reproduced and they got bad out of it.
The sex thing, there's a sex thing like as if it's like a yuck, because they don't say why the world is shit. They just say that it is shit. Okay, the land was corrupted in the face of God. And was full of Hamas.
I think we talked about it in the last episode, but the word Hamas here, in English, I think it's the land was corrupted. The word Hamas is also a name of a terrorist slash whatever you want to call it group that controls the Gaza Strip. It's also a word that describes pillaging.
And taking by force.
Yeah, exactly. So the memory of the destruction of the Bronze Age that we talked about it in the last episode is very vivid here by the use of the word Hamas. Because it's not only people were evildoers to their neighbors. It's a word that describes some kind of the feeling that you get from that word is some kind of an organized, disorganized groups that just pillage and rape and steal. So there's some kind of an ancient memory of a collapse of society. The minute that we got too large for our own good. And that's the distant memory of the turning point from hunter-gatherer society to agricultural societies. And the deal that you made with agriculture basically is that agriculture will give you more food and you will reproduce more, but then we can't vouch for your safety afterward or how your society will go. Here is one of the reasons that why people became angrier, eviler, because we moved away from the closed society in which you know most of the people that surrounding you to some kind of an abstract people way of looking at things.
After the introduction, then Yahweh sees that the wickedness of man and all his urges and thoughts of his hearts only bad all day long.
That's a literal translation.
Literal translation. Only bad all day long. It's like people are always evil. They're always evil. So,
But I think here, all day long, it's literal. But I think it's like the word in French, toujours or tout le monde.
Toujours,
it's like
toujours.
Toujours is every day, but
literally, right.
But it's always. It's okay.
So Yahweh, that makes him sad. Okay? His heart is sad. This is the deity that we're talking about. He sees what his
And literally
creation...
the word for word here is he's being saddened into his heart.
Yes, that's nice.
Onto his heart. Yeah, it's very poetic.
It's very nice. And then the next thing is that Yahweh says, I will exterminate the Jews, the man that I created from the face of the earth. Yahweh and Elohim, they say and do the same thing in the story, one after the other. Later, it was the land was corrupted in the face of Elohim, of gods, and then after, the same thing was said about Yahweh. So this is like in your face, two deities in the story. It goes on and on. Everything that Yahweh does or says or feels, Elohim does, says, or feels. And this is why it's 4 chapters long, because there's a lot of repetitions here.
There's repetitions and dissimilarities as well. We can see, as we talked about in our creation episodes, that the Elohim deity is much less personal and more detached from human emotions. On the contrary, Yahweh is very emotional. If Yahweh was a goddess, then some 19th century, early 20th century psychiatrist would have written an article about how Yahweh is hysterical. Yes. Because he's saddened, and immediately afterwards he wipes out all of his individual creations.
So he's saddened, and then he says, I'm going to exterminate everything from the land and the birds. But he likes Noah. So it reminded me a little bit of the George Carlin bit about God loves you. And he looks at everything you do, and if you do something wrong, he will put you in hell for it forever and ever and ever. But he loves you. So this is like a crazy person.
There's some kind of a play in words here. In Hebrew, it's much more obvious. Not obvious, but it's shouting louder from the text. For example, there's this root of nun, het, mem, the sounds of n,
Nacham.
and nacham, which is also first God, Yahweh, sees all of man's actions and he's saddened. But the word before the word saddened is yenachem, which usually means in modern Hebrew comfort. But here in this context and old version of the word, it's saddened, but it's specifically used because of its root, because later God wipes, he wipes, and the word here is emcha. It's not the same root, but it's the same sound. And back then there weren't any linguistic faculties in universities. Scholarship wasn't even invented back then. The sound was more important than grammar. So there's Yinachem, Emache, Nachamti. And then Noach. This is the tale of Noach.
All the Nuh that we have had, Noach, and then Noach Matzah Chen. Chen, that's inversion of Noach. It's Ch N instead of N Ch.
Exactly. It's a brilliant trick, in my view, especially if you consider it a very, very old tale. Or I think it's a brilliant trick because I speak Hebrew and I just figure and I noticed that, and I have a way to notice that. But Noach, his name is a word that its meaning is comfortable.
Yeah, easygoing.
Or easygoing.
Yeah.
So there's this use of the root nachum, the word, the sound that we spoke about earlier, and the hero that comes out of it is someone that God, Yahweh, consider him easygoing and comfortable to work with.
And the first thing that we thought about him is that he's a righteous and naive in his generations.
And as we talked about in the last episode, the fact that he is comfortable to work with easygoing is very different than an epic tale about a grand hero, even from the Indian myths and the Mesopotamian myths, the Babylonian and the Greek. You have a hero, and I think it's some kind of a reoccurring theme throughout the stories of the Hebrews and the Jews.
You can contrast that to two movies about Noach. There's the movie Noah, 2011 with Russell Crowe, and then there's Evan Almighty with Steve Carell. Okay, so here we can mention, we talked about it, Omri, and we said that as exclusive content for our members, we're gonna review movies about the Bible and have that as exclusive content. So I'm only gonna touch a little bit on that. You can't make a movie about Noach the way that it was written, because as you said, it's not a character.
Yeah. You will need a team of Hollywood savvy writers to fill in all the blanks.
In between.
And to create his character, basically.
It's very apparent with Evan Almighty, also with Noach, there's like the hero's journey. They put that into this character, like he refuses the call at first for adventure. Or in the case of Evan Almighty, he refuses almost all the way through. This is not Noach. They are the two bosses that he has, Yahweh and Elohim. They micromanage the shit out of everything. They tell him exactly how to build his ark, the dimensions, everything. They might as well do it themselves.
A point about the two gods, for us it's obvious because we are into it, but for the listener and reader of that time and later on, it wasn't that obvious that it's two deities. If you take as a fact that people wrote it, and if you listen to scholars and read for yourself, then you will see the two traditions and two peoples that had different stories and how it's a clear editing job here. But for the listener and reader, it's still the same God.
I'm not sure I agree with you. That at the time, the editing was done, it was done for a reason, because this was their God, this was their God. But it's actually the same God. It's like in Hindu, God is one. It's a process. It's a political process.
I don't think that the people who worshipped Elohim and the people who worshipped Yahweh lived to hear this tale, the complete tale. Elohim appears in a tale that was told many times, and the tale that Yahweh appears was told many times by different people. The moment that they got the entire story together, stitch it in a very crude editing job, I think there wasn't a person alive that remembered Elohim, maybe. That's only my opinion. Again, we're not scholars.
Not biblical scholars. Okay, but without being a biblical scholar, you mentioned one difference between them. Yahweh is saddened and Elohim is more dispassionate. So Yahweh, he's the one who says that the nature of man is evil from his youth. This is something very emotional. Elohim doesn't say that. It's like again, it goes to the fact that he was saddened, and he's the one, when there's a covenant at the end, he's the one that Noach builds a shrine for.
Exactly.
He didn't build a shrine for Elohim. Elohim, that's the amorphous God.
Or maybe that the people who worshipped Elohim no longer have shrines. They got destroyed. That's something that I don't know if we mentioned that, but there's two people here every time. One of those people was destroyed 150 years before Scholars think one of the first editions of the Torah was created. Yes, the Torah, the first five books of the Old Testament, somewhere in the 7th century BCE, it was formed in the kingdom of Judea. And it was 150 years after the kingdom of Israel, in which the Canaanite gods and the Canaanite pantheon was much more relevant and much more prominent.
And the culture also.
And the culture, because they were Norse, they were closer to the Canaanites and the Arameans and the Assyrians.
Philistines and everybody. No, not Philistines, Phoenicians.
Phoenicians and everybody, yeah. They got destroyed in the 8th century BCE. Completely destroyed.
And they moved, all of them moved.
A lot of them migrated south, especially the elite, because the elite, they are always in danger when you have regime change. And they probably are more familiar with the story than the
average Shmuel.
average Joe, Yosef.
Average Yosef. Okay, so.
Average Yosef. So just to mention it, that imagine two peoples speaking the same language, roughly, with two different narratives on the creation of the world and their version of epic tales that surrounded the area.
Put together into one book so they can worship the same way in the same state and not have a religious war.
Yeah, probably because of geopolitical reasons.
So Noach builds a shrine for Yahweh. So Noach first builds the shrine, and then after Yahweh smells
again
the smell of the incense or whatever, all the animals that he put there, right? The tehorah, the pure animals, because he had to take in the pure animals. Yahweh told him to take pure animals. Elohim didn't say anything about pure animals. So only after that, he says, okay, I won't make a deluge, flood again. While Elohim, he's the one who says, here אני מקים את בריתי, a covenant, and I will protect and everything. So again, the dispassionate God. So I like again how the suspense slowly builds. Tell us how high the water is and how hard the rain is. And by the way, for us, it's not the story isn't called the flood. It's called the deluge, Hamabul. It's the rain. It's not the water that rises. So they tell us again and again, we're going to kill everything, destroy everything. And there's one line that I like, ויזכור אלוהים את נוח ואת כל החיה ואת כל הבהמה אשר איתו בתיבה. And Elohim, God, remembered Noach. Just like he didn't forget. And then you get the sense that how lonely it is for Noach to be there for days upon days, not knowing if he's alone.
Practically in space, floating, because as we told in one of our episodes, their image of nothingness is probably vast horizons of oceans and seas and skies. So the image of loneliness in the imagination of the listener is very, very potent. It's a very modern interpretation to say that he covered his mistake by committing genocide. It's very Richard Dawkins-esque to say that. But for the listener, God is wiping out a lot of evil persons. He's creating a clean slate and on the way proving that he can make mistakes. So it's not like, your God is not omnipotent. Your God is very omnipotent. He's very omnipotent in the limited realm of the possibilities of your imagination.
And it becomes a problem if you take these lines and then extrapolate from that there's no climate crisis. This is okay, so we're talking about a story that was written 3,000 years ago by people who had a totally different life experience and also insights about the world that we should extrapolate and create policy from. So the way that Elohim does the covenant, again, it shows the difference between them. He does a rainbow. Keshet be'anan. That's amorphous. You can't touch it. It's magical. It's divine.
It's literally divine. It even has a powerful psychological effect on modern atheists, secular, non-conforming people like yourself, like yours truly. Like 2 days, 3 days ago, there was a storm here. I was in the vicinity of Jerusalem, in the hills surrounding Jerusalem, and it was snowy. And before the snow caught up on the ground, there was a big storm, but there was some kind of a intermission between the storms. The sun emerged from the clouds while it was still the backdrop of the storm that was 5 minutes ago, and there was a perfect rainbow. And it's literally magical.
When I was a kid, we traveled to Norway. We were in a field, a large field, and there was a rainbow in the middle of the field. So it wasn't like behind a mountain or in a forest. It was both ends of the rainbow were just there. And we ran to one side, and then it disappears when you get there. And then we ran to the other side, and then it disappeared over there. It was absolutely magical.
You can see some kind of a dopamine effect in the emergence of the rainbow itself, because I, as a modern person, looked at the storm through a glass window in the fourth floor. I was completely protected, completely warm. Inside of a tent or a shack out of wood, the storm is much, much more prevalent. Your house is vibrating. The drops are falling out of the cracks in the tent or the shack. And suddenly there's some kind of a pause. And there's an effect on that pause. That pause is not longer in your head. It's also outside. You have a mark. So it's a literal alliance or some kind of a pact between the deity and the people under him, because they are under attack. And now there's some kind of a pause. And there's an image to represent that pause.
How come a rainbow is not more prevalent in mythical and divine stories? I don't remember anybody talking about a rainbow. Maybe there's some Hindu story,
I think in the Inca, if you go to Peru and you go to one of the most, and you go to Cusco, which is considered the Jerusalem of the Incas,
and also the tourist attraction.
Yeah, of course. Israel colony, beware. You will see a lot of LGBTQ flags on porches and stuff, and you will say, they are very progressive. But no, it's the symbol of the Incas, I think. And their sun was the sun god.
I think you can look at the story as a horror story. The levels of wickedness and evilness in the land, and the violence of the flood. It goes into detail about how all the flesh will be destroyed, annihilated, is being destroyed, is being lishchot kol basar. Lishchot, that's to slaughter.
Basar, it's flesh and also meat.
Yes, everything that has a living spirit inside of it, under the sky.
Even flies and cockroaches.
And people will die, and the entire universe, a yakum, that is on the face of the earth, again and again and again and again. This is a horror story. Everything is destroyed. No wonder that the first thing that Noach does after building the shrine, he just gets drunk as hell. He builds a vineyard.
That's a clear sign of PTSD. Drowning yourself. You see what I did here?
Drowning yourself. Boom. And then it's so funny. He exposes himself, and one of his sons sees his genitals. And then the way that they describe that they cover him, it's very funny. That they tell you that they turn their backs on him and walk backwards. Like everything was so epic. I think it's called bathos. I learned this term this week. When you contrast something, high and mighty with the mundane and absurd. So everything with this delusion flood was just like incredible. And then they tell you that they walk backwards. In order to not see.
I think that's a very interesting detail, because if you want to keep Noah's character as pure, then seeing his privates is some kind of a depurification process into his name and into his purity. So it was very important to the storytellers to give the audience the description of how they covered him, because if the immediate imagination of one person covering another person is running towards him, and then he shames him if he sees his privates. And it's also the person who covers Noach is Shem, his son that we come from, the Semites. We, I mean, not only we here, Gil and me, also we circa 600, 700 BCE.
Yeah, 1000 BCE.
Yeah. So our lineage is the purer one.
This incident, obviously, this is not something that a righteous person does, gets drunk and exposes himself. So this spurred a theological debate through the generations, like how righteous was Noach. So he was righteous in his generations, so he was like the most righteous of the bunch, because that's not really righteous. So you can only imagine how bad the guys that drowned.
In a world full of Trumps, even Mitt Romney is righteous.
We didn't mention anything about the birds, the doves.
The doves and the raven, or the crow. In Hebrew, we have only one word to describe raven and a crow. we have no difference between raven and a crow.
I don't know what the difference is, because we only have one word.
I think raven is maybe bigger.
I don't know.
Raven is the one that talks in Game of Thrones, and crow is the nickname they give the whatever. That's how I... It also, after that, he caps the maximum time a human being can live it to 120, because it was too much. Methuselah 900, Adam 1000. It's too much.
And it's interesting, 120, most of our listeners who do not speak Hebrew do not know, but we still use that number when you say to someone, happy birthday, may you live to 120 years old. Ad 120 shana.
You mentioned it was it's a horror story. I think the horror here is a little bit a more modern interpretation because of the feelings that it makes you feel. It makes you feel horror. But I think it's more of a suspense, epic suspense here, because you have the birds, the crow and the dove. He releases them to find land, and they come back without land. So there's some kind of a suspense here. But as an epic tale, there's some kind of a reoccurring theme in the characters that are told by the ancient Hebrews and Jews. Because if you take into consideration that the main focus is the deity, then humans need to be downgraded, because you always have this suspension between worshipping humans too much. So every human character in the beginnings of the stories has major flaws, major flaws, and you can't identify with them. They are not Herculean, or they're not the guy that went to Hades to retrieve his wife. They're not. You don't need to identify with them.
Yes.
They need to be downgraded. So Noach has his drunken episode. Abraham tries to kill his son. Isaac, he's a layman. Jacob, he's a liar. So, David is a womanizer. How do you say it? No F.
Adulterer.
He's an adulterer.
Right. Solomon has 1,000 wives.
No, that's good.
That's good.
Respect.
So Noach is like another Adam. He's better than Adam. Adam didn't follow orders. Noach follows orders. The next father of the people will be Abraham. He follows orders. So this tells you what kind of hero this religion promotes. Not people who, conquer or
try to find some fountain of youth, or to cheat life, to cheat the gods. Here is the God is the character. The gods. The God. They are the main man.
At the beginning, they start out the story displeased with what they've done. Then they decide to start over, a blank slate. They save the animals, the creatures that they want to save, and then they make a new covenant. And now they say, okay, that's it. That's the last time. New rules. Okay, now we'll start over. So they have the ark. Noah.
Yeah. He has that arc.
He has the ark. Boom. Okay, that's a good place to end this episode.
So here we have an epic tale. It's something that is very familiar with the audience of that time. But the epic tale is not about a superhero. It's about a super comfortable guy that does what he's told. So inside the epicness of the story, huge mortalities, huge events, destruction, nudity, and suspense with the doves, loneliness. Inside of all that, Noach is not like the hero as he is the main character, even not the main character.
Yeah, he's there.
He's like the conduit or the relay station, and that the actions of the deity through his body and his own private actions. But the sense that the reader, listener of that time is that God, he is the mover and shaker of all things. Yes. And it's not a conflict against God as other epics. It's not like trying to be a god. The hero does what is told inside of this epicness.
And you can't fight with these deities. They can destroy, annihilate everything. Yeah. It's not, you can't sneak around and steal their helmet. No, this is an all-powerful that is not immune to mistakes and to changing his minds, but he can destroy the entire universe.
That makes him even more dangerous to you, the listener. Don't cross him, because he has a short fuse.
Yeah, don't even think about it. Just don't even think about it.
He's hysterical.
Okay, so to sum up, this is the longest story so far in the book of Genesis. There are two deities stitched together with their own different characteristics and people who follow them. They are the ones who tell Noah to do everything. He does everything exactly as he's told. And then all the evil that was in the pre-flood world is destroyed. And now let's start anew. And in the next episodes, we'll see there's one about some lineages and big cities. And then starts the tale of Avraham. So we're getting into the heart of the book. Avraham, this is like the first father of the Hebrews. This is huge. So be sure to follow us wherever you're getting this, so you don't miss on that one. And at first, we wanted to post every week a new episode, but the research takes a long time. So what we're going to do is post 3 episodes per month. We'll try to do it 3 episodes per month. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll do more, maybe we'll do less, but that's the goal. And if you'd like to support us and to help us achieve that goal, you can go to our website, podcastofbiblicalproportions.com, and become a member. That's awesome if you can do it. We'll be very, very happy, and it will be very, very helpful. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Michelle Collins, for being our first member. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.